So, I mean, this is going to be the last, virtual session on, discourse analysis. And I already, sent you, two, lectures, which are number 6 and number 7. Number 6 and number 7, okay? Number 6 is basically, lecture number 6 is basically dealing with more paralinguistic features of spoken discourse. So, in the last session, we already dealt with, one of the pertinent, features or properties of paralinguistics, which is intonation. And we basically, said that intonation is of paramount importance for, the interpretation and processing of spoken discourse, basically. Interpretation and processing of, spoken, discourse, okay? It's basically for the reason that it helps in expressing the attitudes of emotions of speakers, attitudes and emotions of speakers. And we essentially stress the fact that the normal intonational patterns, you are familiar with, may be, converted. They may change. Of course, depending on the attitudes and emotions of speakers. Okay. Today, as I have just said, we will, try to, cover another pertinent, feature of paralanguage or paralinguistics, which is basically, to begin with, it's emphatic stress. Emphatic stress. So, please, I know that you are already familiar with stress, and this is what we basically refer to as linguistic stress. Linguistic stress. So, do you have any idea about the difference that exists between linguistic stress and emphatic stress, please? Do you have any idea about this difference between linguistic stress and emphatic stress? Because emphatic stress is not basically linguistic in nature. And let me first see if you are familiar with this or not, and then I will explain. Yes, please. Yes, Ms. Rashida, do you have any answer for this?
You are not. No, I just already started the session.
Okay. Any answer for this question, please? What's the difference between linguistic stress and emphatic stress?
Professor, emphatic stress, in fact, it's emphatic stress is emphasis. That's why it's called emphatic. It's emphasis on a word in a sentence.
Sorry. Yes, Abdulmola, could you repeat, please?
I said it's called emphatic stress because it is emphasized on a word in a sentence.
What about linguistic stress? What is it?
It is a normal stress that we have been used to study, and it's the stress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it when we say linguistic stress? What is it then, Sir Abdelmoula? I'm not saying, I'm not asking you to define, that is to say that it is an extra force that is associated with, no. To understand the real meaning of emphatic stress, you should, bear in mind that linguistic stress, Rashid, do you want to say something? Yes. I have been saying that in order to understand the real meaning of emphatic stress, you should, bear in mind that linguistic stress is basically that kind of stress, yes, you are familiar with, but which is, determined, which is located on the basis of linguistic factors. This is the point. On the basis of linguistic factors. That is to say, factors which have basically to do with the phonetic environment in which the syllables, phonetic environments which are, let's say, determinants of the structure of the syllable. That is to say, by phonetic factors or linguistic factors, which have simply to do, they have to do with the structure of the word itself, or with the structure of the syllable itself, or with the position of different syllables within the word. Let me give you an example, for instance, from English or from, wait, Sabah, please, wait 1 minute, please. Let me finish first, please. I will try to give you one example from, standard Arabic or Moroccan Arabic, as it's the same. So, standard Arabic, basically, like English, is dependent on syllable weight for the assignment of stress. And you are already familiar with syllable weight. So we said before that syllable weight is basically when you try to measure, the internal structure of the syllable, to say whether the syllable is light or heavy. So in English and in standard Arabic, heavy syllables have priority to bear stress. They have priority to attract stress. Then it's only when we don't have a heavy syllable in the word that stress is going to fall on a light one. So then both English and standard Arabic rely on the criterion of syllable weight to, locate stress. So in other languages, we do not pay heed. We do not pay heed to whether the syllable is light or heavy to be stressed, but stress may simply be located on the basis of the position of the syllable within the word. It's only located based on, or depending on the position of the syllable within the word. If we just take the case of French language, it's a clear example for this. So in French, stress all the time falls on the last syllable. It all the time falls on the last syllable. Meaning that in this case, in French, stress is located depending on the position of the syllable. That is to say, it's all the time the final syllable that is stressed. So in these cases, both syllable weight and the position of the syllable are responsible. They are responsible for the location of stress within words, which amounts to saying, in fact, that these are linguistic, criteria or linguistic factors, which is totally different from emphatic stress. So for emphatic stress, we do not pay attention to, whether the word, has light or heavy syllables no. We only pay attention to, the attitude, to the intention, let's say, to the intention of the speaker, the one who is using language or speaking. So that the speaker would like to put much emphasis, as Abdelmoula has just said. He wants or she wants to put much emphasis on the word to be stressed, and indeed it's the fact. What is also of great importance for understanding the difference that exists between linguistic stress and emphatic stress is that normally, and usually in any given language, we claim that it's only lexical bearing words or lexical categories, lexical items. I mean nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, auxiliaries, etc. that can attract stress. For functional words such as prepositions, determinants, articles, and so on, they are not stressed. They do not bear stress when they occur within a given sentence. We do not stress them. However, for emphatic stress, all words existing in language, without exception, are likely to be stressed. And we will see examples right now of these cases. Is it clear, this difference between emphatic and linguistic stress, please? Is it clear?
Yes, it's clear for me, Professor.
Yes, Professor.
Okay. Then, as mentioned in the lecture, emphatic stress is different from the normal stress you are familiar with. As opposed to normal stress, the location of which within words depends on a number of phonological or linguistic or phonetic parameters, emphatic stress is the placement of articulatory prominence or emphasis on a word in a sentence. For what purpose? For what purpose we put emphasis on a word in a sentence? It's basically for the purpose of comparing, connecting, or clarifying things. Comparing, connecting, or clarifying things. So usually, emphatic stress signals out the word that the speaker considers the most important, in which case even a function word may become stressed. As I have just said, function words like prepositions, articles, determinants, pronouns are not stressed normally. For normal stress, they are not stressed. We do not stress them. But when it is emphatic stress, when it comes to emphatic stress, even these function words can be stressed or may become stressed. So consider the following examples then. Number one, John's watch is made of gold. John's watch is made of gold. Here, emphasis is put on the word gold. It's put, emphatic stress is on the word gold. So then,
Madam, can you please repeat this example?
It's in the lecture. Don't you have the lecture in front of your eyes, please?
No, I have just a PDF. I cannot read from the PDF and attend the live at the same time.
But you can have it in front of your eyes and follow at the same time. What's the problem?
I don't have papers. I have just PDFs.
Okay. So the example is the following. John's watch is made of gold.
Okay.
John's watch is made of gold. So the word that is that has emphatic stress is basically gold. Is it clear?
Yes.
Then we have a number of options. We have a number of options for the interpretation of this sentence. Does it mean that is John's watch made of silver? Whose watch is made of gold? What is made of gold? Is John's necklace made of gold? So then, which option do you think is, the one that goes hand in hand with John's watch is made of gold? Which one? Which question? Is it A, B, C, D?
Yeah.
It's A, of course. Yeah, the answer is here. It should be observed that A is the correct answer because the word silver contradicts the word gold, and the interrogative statement provides a chance to re-emphasize the word gold. Okay? Second example. Last week's football match was very exciting. Let me repeat this example again. Last week's football match was very exciting. So emphatic stress is on the word exciting. Then again, the options that we may have is, was yesterday's football match very exciting? Was last week's tennis match very exciting? Was last week's football match dull? Was last week's football, training very exciting? So then which option do you think, is answering, the question we have? Huh? Of course, it is, again, it's, I'm sorry. Of course, it is, C. It is option C. It should be remarked that the correct option is C, for the interrogative statement gives a room for the speaker to re-emphasize the word exciting as a response to this question. So, then, what is an emphasized? Yes, Abdulmola.
So I have just a remark. This emphatic stress, it cannot be observed. Emphatic stress. Yeah, emphatic stress, it cannot be observed in written discourse. It's only in spoken discourse.
Abdulmola, could you read the title of the lecture, please? What's the title of the lecture?
Yes, it's spoken discourse.
Huh?
Yes, it's spoken discourse.
Are we dealing with the written? We finished with the written discourse, Abdulmola.
Okay.
We are dealing with more features of spoken discourse, Abdulmola. Is it clear?
I just want to say, is there any way that we can observe this phenomenon?
No, please, no. The things we are discussing have nothing to do with the written discourse. You know why, Abdulmola? You need to reflect on this yourself, because as we said before, so what are paralinguistics as we defined them? What is prosody as we defined it before? Prosody or paralinguistic, features are those features which are never part of the written system or orthograph. They are only prevalent. They are only prevalent at the level of speaking, at the level of pronunciation. Is it clear, Abdulmola?
Yes, Professor, it's clear.
And emphatic stress is no exception. It is one of these paralinguistic features. Okay?
Madam?
So then, yes, Warda, please.
Madam, please, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just want to ask, this emphatic stress, is it used to focalize or to make a word focal in the sentence, to make it central?
That's it. Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. Yeah. That is the idea. Okay. So then an emphasized word is then a word that is pronounced with more force, energy, or loudness. In an utterance or sentence, when a particular word is underlined or all the letters are capitalized, it means that the word carries emphatic stress or is emphasized. Okay? So then, as spoken discourse is attitudinal in the sense that one often speaks not only for the sake of conveying information, but also for the sake of conveying attitudes and emotions. Emphatic stress can then be used to, or it can be used, to achieve the following, aims or ends. What are these? A, it signals the informational status of a word. It may signal information that is not shared between a speaker and a hearer, or it may indicate the focus of an utterance or sentence. The focus of an utterance or sentence. This being the case, emphatic stress plays a crucial discourse function in that speakers do consciously make efforts to point out certain words over others, and the reason they do this is to draw the interlocutors or audience's attention to certain words that may not be the content words. Is this clear? Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, it is clear, madam.
Okay. So now we'll be shifting to, another important feature of paralinguistics or paralanguage, which is tempo, or what is also called pace. So tempo or pace is also considered a component of prosody. What is it then? It is a constituent of rhythm as well. So spoken language unfolds in time, and speaking, as every other form of motion, takes place by continuously moving parts of the body over time. As a consequence, there is always a given tempo of speech. So it simply means a correlate of time. Then it is a correlate of time during which a speech unit lasts, during which it's a kind of duration of speech. How much time does it take place, for instance, to utter this utterance or this sentence? Is it a slow pace? Is it a quick one, or what? Because if we have it, if we have slow, pace, then it would have a particular meaning. And if we have a quick one, then it would have another different meaning. So spoken discourse often strikes the listener as being very fast. Usually spoken discourse strikes the listener as being very fast, although speech rates vary considerably. So the rate of speech may vary considerably, but usually and normally spoken discourse is all the time, quick. It's very fast and it's quick. So for example, you have ratio monologues may contain 160 words per minute, while conversation, that is to say, the spontaneous speech in which we have conversation, can consist of up to 220 words per minute. You see the pace of utterances within the spoken discourse? So the impression of faster or slower speech generally results from the amount of intraclausal pausing that speakers may make use of. Also, this can vary depending on who we are talking to and what the situation is. It's very important. So suppose it's lecturing. It's a kind of lecturing. It's, delivering a lecture in front of an audience. Do you think that it's going to be, very fast, or it's going to be, somehow slow speech?
It would be somehow slow because you are delivering a message to an audience.
Very good. And you do not know the audience, of course. You do not know the audience. That's why you have to give yourself time to make things understandable by the audience. So this, the audience may not, follow with you if ever you, speak very quickly, or your, speech is very, fast one. So then this, pace of speech is a characteristic of spoken language. Of course, it can't be, of course, a characteristic of written language, because we never speak to the writer. We only, read his words. So speakers are able to change the rate of speech if they deliberately intend to do so. If you intend to if you do it, on purpose, then you may change the rate of your speech. Similarly, on the speech perception side, so what about the listeners? So if you are speaking quickly, what about the listener? So on the perception side, listeners have an idea about whether a given portion of speech was fast or slow relative to an expected normal tempo. This is the point, okay? So it should be then, observed or remarked that pauses play a central role in dealing with pace or tempo, and it frequently makes a big difference if pauses are taken into consideration or not. Because you know that if ever you make pauses when speaking, then you give the opportunity to the audience to follow you. You give him or her the opportunity, or you give it the opportunity not to lose the thread of discussion, or the thread of information. Okay. The usual distinction is that tempo can either be defined as articulation rate or speaking rate. We have two types of pace or tempo. So it could be articulation rate or speaking rate. That is to say, whether you articulate in a quick way, in a fast way, or a slow way, or whether you speak in a quick way and in a slow one. So what is then articulation rate and what is speaking rate? So articulation rate, that is to say, the former is a net rate that refers to phases of articulation, excluding pauses. Phases of articulation, excluding pauses. While the latter, that is to say, speaking rate, as a cross rate, refers to the entire speaking phase, including pauses. Okay? So this is just for you extra information. You do not really need to go into details understanding this pace or tempo. So it's for extra information. So tempo or pace and rate are usually used interchangeably. These three terms are usually used interchangeably to mean how fast or slow a person speaks. A rate is part of the paralanguage of speech, along with loudness and pitch. It is not language, but it accompanies all of our spoken use of language and can convey attitude and emotion. We can vary the rate depending on the emotions we are feeling or the type of message we are communicating. It's like intonation. It's the same as intonation. It's basically, has the function of conveying attitude and emotion, like also emphatic stress. So we can vary the rate of our speech depending on the emotions we are feeling or the type of message we are communicating. For example, let me here give you a simple example. If you are experiencing joy, if you do experience joy, you will speak at a faster rate compared to a speaker who is expressing surprise, who will speak at a much faster rate. Normally, you speak about 125 words per minute, but you may speak much slower at about 100 words per minute if you are given a slide presentation. You see the point here? If you are given a slide presentation, you will be speaking at about 100 words per minute. That's the point. Is this some tempo or phase or rate of speech? Is it clear, please? Yes, please. Tomia, do you have any question?
I want to ask you about if tempo is related to pathos, like it ignites emotion.
Is related to what?
Pathos.
Huh?
Pathos.
Utterance.
No, pathos. It's like ignites emotions and.
Yeah, this is what I have just said, Somaya. This is what I have just said. In speech, in language, in general, when you use language, when you use, utterances, when you speak, of course, you would like to express certain emotions or certain attitudes, in which case you will be varying, the rate of your speech according to what you would like to express. I have just given the example of joy. Suppose you are experiencing joy. Are you going to speak at a fast or, slow speed speech, Somaya? Yes, Somaya, please. What about the example I have just given you?
I think slowly.
No, I'm sorry. No, it's fast. It's fast. Yeah. As compared to when you are, delivering a lecture, you are giving a slide presentation. Are you going to speak at a slow one or at a fast one?
Maybe I think slowly to convey more details.
Yeah, of course. Sure. Yeah, it's sure. Yes, that's it. That's the point. Okay. So now I will be moving to the last, paralinguistic feature of spoken discourse, which is volume or loudness. So volume or loudness is used to enhance the meaning of utterances. Volume or loudness is basically used to enhance the meaning of utterances. Similar to pace or like pace, speakers change the volume intensity depending on the context in which they are involved. So volume is the perceived loudness of the speaker. Volume refers basically to the perceived loudness of the speaker. Loudness is what the audience actually perceives, and it correlates with the physical strength or amplitude. So this is loudness or volume. So it is, moreover, the psychological characteristic of physical strength or amplitude. It is perceived as auditory sensation by the listener, which can be ordered on a scale from quiet to loud. Quiet to loud. So let's again here a concrete example. Suppose that we have a king or a minister who is delivering a political speech. Suppose that it is a crisis, for instance. We have a crisis, a given crisis, for instance. It's a local crisis, for instance. Let's say of education, of economics, of, health. Then, in your point of view, is, this speaker going to, speak in a quiet manner or loudly? What do you think then? Quickly, please. Yes, please.
Teacher.
Could you deactivate the micro, Rashida, please? Miss Rashida. You have much noise, Rashida. You have much noise at home.
I'm sorry, teacher. I will answer the question, please.
Yeah, the floor is yours, Rashida, of course. The floor is yours.
In this case, the president, for example, he will present or deliver his discourse with loudly.
Loudly. Yes. Why do you think so, Rashida? Why do you think so? Why is he going to do so?
Because the space is very large, and the audience they can't receive the message well.
Or other answer, please. Other answer for this question.
Madam?
Yes, Warda?
Madam, you said there is a crisis. I couldn't...
Crisis. Yeah.
So if he is upset or bothered from the crisis, he will express his emotions by speaking out loud.
Very good. That's the point. So if he is really upset and he cares about the affairs of his nation, for instance, then of course he will be speaking very loudly in order to reach for the ears of the audience, and also in order to be convincing and to make the others sympathize with him or her. Yes, this is your point, Warda. Yes, this is what you want to say, Warda.
Madam?
Yes, Warda.
I want to ask, does the speech have has a relationship with spontaneity?
Spontaneity. Yes, of course.
Spontaneity.
Yes, it has. Yes, of course, it has. And as I have just said, especially if it's a sudden crisis, if it's a very, strong one, it's something that is harmful and something that is going to, shake the state of being of a given nation, then of course the king or the president can only be speaking a loud voice, it's very loudly. And this is, of course, as you know, yeah, wait, please, till I finish. You know that this happened with, presidents in the United States. In the United States, this happened with a number of presidents, okay? Yes, Sumaya, what do you want to add, please? Sumaya.
I want to add that only to be heard, speaking loudly is not only to be heard, but also to convey confidence.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. To win the confidence of the audience. Yes, sure. Yeah.
Because it's like weak volume is perceived as less confident of lacking emotions or lacking emotions.
That's it. That's the point. Yes, that's the point. Yeah. Any other answer for this question, please? Any other answer for this question, please? Yes, please.
Teacher?
Rashida?
The use of the loudly may be to persuade or to influence the audience.
To persuade or influence the audience. Yes, sure. This is what we have just said. It's for the purpose of convincing. It's for the purpose of making the other sympathize with what we are saying. Yeah, that's it. Or to raise awareness to given issues taking place. Yeah.
I want to add, the speakers often start with adequate volume because it's hard to keep the same volume at the end of the presentation. So that the speaker should manage this volume. It's not just in the beginning speaking loudly and then speaking with weak volume. It's like
of course,
it would be difficult
sure.
to the listener or to the audience to hear the most important part, or it's like simply difficult to hear.
Yeah, sure.
That's the part of the presentation.
That's the point. Yes, that's sure. Yes. Then loudness is then a subjective measure of the listener. Yeah. It's not a measure. It's not a thing that is measured by the speaker, but it's something that is measured by the listener, which is often confused with objective measures of sound strength, such as sound pressure, level, or sound intensity or sound power. It is different from this. So amplitude is the strength or power of the wave signal. So phonetically speaking, this is a detailed phonetic, explanation, of what is amplitude or, volume. So higher amplitudes on the wave graph are interpreted as a higher volume. Hence, the name amplifier for a device that increases amplitude. Okay, so as a recapitulation of what we have been discussing in this lecture, we have tried basically to cover, I mean, in this lecture and in the previous one, the non-verbal elements of speech. Non-verbal elements of speech used to modify meaning and convey emotion and attitude, namely or essentially intonation, stress, tempo, and volume. You should keep in mind, and what is important for you to bear in mind. So you should bear in mind that the various elements of prosody we have been considering in these two lectures interact. They interact in complex ways to set up the listener's expectations about speakers, to signal their attitudes towards situations, people, and things, to hint at their emotional state, and so on. End of this lecture. And we have here, I mean, an activity, please. Number 1, in which I'm asking you to consider, a set of statements along with the set of questions. So then you should remember that a statement is most times an answer to a question. Considering the emphasized words in each given statement, which of the questions is appropriate to the corresponding statement? It's like, the task we did with the examples I gave you for emphatic stress. So you should just follow the same, path in order to answer this question. Okay? And that's it.
Good.
Yeah, who is speaking? Who is speaking?
Can I give an answer? Yeah.
Answer for what, Siwali?
The activity, the exercise.
It's not for where you are not expected to answer it right now. It's an activity that you would have time to do, and we will of course have answers for it, interacting on the platform. Okay, because we need to shift Siwali to lecture number 7. Okay, so then let's go to lecture number 7, which is of course going to be the last one, and it's of course again of paramount importance because it is discussing something that we already started discussing in face-to-face classes, and this is context. This is context in discourse analysis. Context in discourse analysis. So what did we basically say about context in class, in face-to-face classes? What did we say about context in discourse analysis? Yes, please. What did we say about it? Yes, please. Do you hear me? Do you hear me, please?
Yes, Professor.
Yes, Abdelmoula, please.
So we try to see that context in linguistic discourse is what's define the meaning of a given discourse, because context is contribute largely to understand the beyond meaning of a given sentence.
Yes,
clause,
yes, sure. But we try to categorize context into different types. We said that we do not only have linguistic context or local context, but we have other type of context. Could you remind me of this?
So we'll talk about distributional context and cultural context, as I still remember.
I'm not speaking about the lecture. I'm not speaking about what is involved in the lecture. What we started discussing in class, basically. In our face-to-face classes, what did we say about context? So sorry to have a kind of, pause for 10 minutes. Okay, dear students, for 10 minutes, please, because I have an emergency, okay, at home. Okay, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, please. 10. Hello, dear students. Here I am again. I'm terribly sorry for this interruption. Yes, please. Yes, dear students.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, madam, it's okay.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry. I'm terribly sorry for this interruption. Sorry. Yes, we have been, speaking about, we already started speaking about, discourse, okay? Sorry, about context, huh? If you still remember, in our face-to-face classes, we said that, context is of paramount importance for an understanding of the intended meanings within a given, discourse. So, we basically made reference to linguistic context, that is to say, its context, that has to do with the text itself, what precedes and what follows within a text. It's language, basically. Linguistic context is language. What precedes and what follows in a text. But we may have, other contexts, such as situational context, cultural context, and we have in reality we have different classifications or categorizations of context depending on the the authors, the thinkers, or the writers. So for the purpose of this lecture, we will try to cover a number of discourses according to a number of contexts, genre of context, according to a number of thinkers and scholars. Okay, so the study of context has been gaining popularity in recent years, either in linguistics itself or in many other interdisciplinary subjects such as semantics, pragmatics, and discourse analysis as well. So let me ask you this question. So when dealing with pragmatics with Professor Kharaki, so were you informed about, the importance of context in, determining the meaning of different utterances, or no?
We talked about that. I was talking about context.
Yes, Abdelmoula. Yes, Abdelmoula. Yes, please, Abdelmoula. Yes, Abdelmoula. What do you want to say?
I see that we talked about the context, and it's important to interrupt the meaning of a given written discourse.
Yes, sure. Then the context of situation, basically. The context of situation in pragmatics is of paramount importance in order to understand, the real meanings of, different utterances. Same thing for semantics. However, in semantics, we do not speak about situational context, but we speak simply about linguistic context. Since in semantics, as you know, we deal only with meaning according to, the surrounding, words. We interpret the meanings of different words according to the words which surround them within the same sentence. Which is, of course, totally different from pragmatics.
Professor?
Sabah, Sumaya, I'm sorry, do you want to say something?
I want to understand like in semantics, context in semantics, related to semantics. For instance, we can say he is a bachelor. Depends on the context. He is a bachelor degree, or he is unmarried man. That's what you want to conceive.
Yeah, we need context to understand the real meaning. Yeah, we need it. We need to know about what precedes this utterance and what follows it. Yes, sure. So then also this context is very important in analyzing or in processing discourse. Context, however, context theories involve a long process of development during which comparative linguistics, structural linguistics, and transformational generative linguistics all contributed to the theoretical foundations of context theories. This is just an idea about the evolution of, the evolution of the real meaning or the different meanings of, context according to different schools of linguistic thought, mainly structuralists, transformational generative linguists, and others. So when we try basically to relate context theories to the field of discourse analysis, we must take into consideration not only the discourse itself, but also the context in which the discourse takes place. The context. Just like what Fillmore in 1977 says, the task is to determine what we can know about the meaning and context of an utterance, given only the knowledge that the utterance has occurred. I find that whenever I notice some sentence in context, I immediately find myself asking what the effect would have been if the context has been slightly different. So Fillmore, he's here in this, quote, is putting emphasis on the importance of context for meaning interpretation, okay? And this is, of course, cited in, Gillian Brown and George Yule, in 2000s, huh? So then what are definitions of context then? So different linguists seek to define context from different points of view in order to answer questions encountered in their own fields and to support their own ideas and theories. This is, of course, clear. So, of course, you know that we will be defining, different concepts and different terms according, to our own interests, according to our own interests and according to what we like to achieve, to what we like to realize in a given examination or study. For example, Dawson, when focusing his study on language meaning, thinks of context as what? As those aspects of the circumstance of actual language use which are taken as relevant to meaning. Those aspects of the circumstance of actual language use, which are taken as relevant to meaning. He further points out, in other words, context is a schematic construct. It is a schematic construct. That is to say, the achievement of pragmatic meaning is a matter of matching up the linguistic elements of the code with the schematic elements of the context. This is very important. It's very important. It's like we have a kind of schema. We have a kind of schema on which we will be trying to make a mapping relationship between, utterances, between linguistic elements, words, sentences, utterances, and elements of the context of the circumstance of actual language use. Circumstance, that is to say, الظروف اللي جرى فيها الحديث، الظروف اللي اختفى فيها الخطاب من المسار ديالو ولا تحقق فيها الخطاب. الظروف اللي تحقق فيها الخطاب. ملي كنقولوا الظروف ما كنبقاوش عند we are not limited to the text, but we may go well beyond, as I told you before in class, we may go well beyond the text to speak about circumstances of other type, They could be cultural, they could be economic, they could be religious, they could be sociocultural, they could be religious, and so on. So when, when Cook was studying the relationship between discourse and literature, basically, he took context into consideration as well. So in his definition, context is just a form of knowledge of the world. It is a knowledge of the form of the world. And the term context can be used in a broad and narrow sense. This is very important. So we can use it, in a narrow sense, in which case we will be referring to knowledge of, factors outside the text and their consideration. And when we use it in the broad sense, it refers to knowledge of these factors and to other parts of the text and their consideration, sometimes referred to as co-text, as co-text, not only text. We won't be only dealing with the text, but with co-text or other texts which were realized in this, at the same time or in the same period. And we also refer to this as intertextuality. Intertextuality. That is to say, how the text and their consideration may interact with other texts, how it may interact with other texts, okay? Again, we have another, view. This time it's that of George Yule. So when studying, reference and inference, because we have two different concepts related to context, which are reference and inference. So George Yule also took context into account or consideration. He provided us with a somewhat general definition, saying that context is the physical environment. This is very important. The context is the physical environment in which a word is used. So here Yule is not only speaking about the text, he's not only speaking about what precedes and what follows in a given text, but he is speaking about the physical environment, the setting, let's say. It's the setting. It could be a classroom, it could be a garden, it could be a theater, it could be a prison, and so on. This is the physical environment in which a word is used, okay? So as you can see, although, context has been viewed from different perspectives for different purposes, all these definitions we have considered have an important point in common. What is this important point that these definitions have in common? That is to say, the definitions that have been provided by a number of linguists and scholars. What do they have in common? One main point of the context is the environment. This is very important. And what is environment? It means circumstances or factors by some other scholars in which a discourse occurs. ظروف اللي تحقق فيها الخطاب. عندما نقول الظروف, when we say circumstances, this is broad, as I have just said. It could be, circumstances which are only related to the writer himself or herself. It could be circumstances which are only related to, the environment of the writer, his biography, let's say, or it could be, these could be circumstances which are broader. That is to say, which have to do with what is economical, what is social, what is cultural, what is sociocultural, what is social, what is, religious, and so on. Okay? So then, we have, of course, a classification of context into different types. We will be considering some of these types. So then, opinions on how to classify context vary from one scholar to another. Some linguists divide context into two groups, while some insist on discussing context from 3, 4, or even 6 dimensions. According to different circumstances mentioned in the above definitions, I would like to categorize context into linguistic context, situational context, and cultural context simply, which are, very frequent and agreed on contexts. So context then could be, we will be considering, taken into consideration is the linguistic one, the situational context, and the cultural one. Okay, to begin with linguistic context. What does linguistic context basically mean? As you have just said, and as you have just informed me, linguistic context refers to the context within the discourse. Within the discourse. It means that we do not go well beyond the discourse in order to, find justifications and significance for the intended meanings, but we simply adhere, we simply stick to the local text, that is to say, to language that is used within the text, that is the relationship between the words, phrases, sentences, and even paragraphs. So take the word bachelor as an example, the word bachelor. So we can't understand the exact meaning of the sentence, he is a bachelor, without the linguistic context to make clear the exact meaning of this word. Moreover, linguistic context can be explored from three aspects. This is very important. It could be exploited or explored from three different aspects: deictic, context, and collocation. And we have, of course, explanation for each given one of these. So what is then deictic, linguistic context? What is it? What is this deictic linguistic context? So if we have a language event, that is to say a language act, it's a happening, it's an event, it's, language, it's discourse that is speaking about a given event, then the participants must know where they are in space and time. The participants must know where they are in space and time. And these features relate directly to the deictic context, by which we refer to the deictic expressions like the time expressions now, for instance. Of course, in any given discourse, we may be using now, then, afterwards, first, second, third, finally. So this is deictic linguistic context. The spatial expressions, here, there, etc., and the person expressions, I, you, etc., So then deictic expressions help to establish deictic roles, which derive from the fact that in normal language behavior, the speaker addresses his utterance to another person and may refer to himself, to a certain place, or to a time. And these are of paramount importance. So these deictic linguistic factors or expressions are very important for the interpretation or the analysis of discourse. Okay. In recent years, some linguists began to pay attention to the previous discourse coordinate. What does it mean? So Lewis basically introduces this coordinate to take account of the aforementioned sentences. It is the case that any sentence other than the first in a fragment of discourse will have the whole of its interpretation forcibly constrained by the preceding text. Not just those phrases which obviously and specifically refer to the preceding text. The interpretations of the words which occur in discourse are constrained by following holiday their co-text. And this is the meaning of co-text. It's the meaning of co-text. And then we are still left with collocation. So early in 1934, Porzeg argued for, the recognition of the importance of syntagmatic relations between example, bite and teeth, bark and dog, blonde and hair, which first called collocation. This is very clear. So collocation is not simply a matter of association of ideas. Although milk is white, we should not often say white milk, while the expression white paint is common enough. You see? So these, the use of collocation in, discourse are very important for its interpretation. Sometimes they are used for irony. Sometimes they may be used for different and various purposes. And we should pay, heed to these collocations when we are interpreting, discourse. We should pay attention to, these collocations or to collocation. Okay. Now we shift to situational context very quickly because this conference will, be finished at 10 o'clock. Situational context it's clear. Situational context or context of situation refers to the environment, time, and place. This is the physical, let's say, as used previously. It's physical, context, environment or physical context in which the discourse occurs, and also the relationship between the participants. Of course, we have to take, the relationship between the participants. Suppose we have a discourse between, professor and learners, teacher and learners. Of course, the discourse is going to, be processed, taking into consideration this kind of relationship. And of course, as I told you before, it's a relationship that is based on power. And of course, the discourse is going to be interpreted on this basis. It's not like when we have a discourse between two friends, when we have a discourse between a doctor and, the patient, when you have a discourse between a politician and the audience, and the citizens, and so on. So this theory, theory of situational context is traditionally approached through the concept of register, which helps to clarify the interrelationship of language with context by handling it under three basic headings: field, tenor, and mode. So what are these then in relation to situational context? So the field of context refers to the ongoing activity. Ongoing activity. We may say field is the linguistic reflection of the purposive role of language user in the situation in which a text has occurred. Tenor refers to the kind of social relationship enacted in or by the discourse. It's clear. And this is what I have just said, social relationship. For instance, what's the relationship between the teacher and the learners? Relationship between a doctor and the patient? Relationship between, relationship between, the boss of a company or, a factory and, the employees, and so on. So the notion of tenor, therefore, highlights the way in which linguistic choices are affected, not just by the topic or subjects of communication, but also by the kind of social relationship within which communication is taking place. Last, one is mode. So the mode is the linguistic reflection. It's the linguistic reflection of the relationship the language user has to the medium of transmission, mode. That is to say, mode through which, linguistic reflection is taking place. The medium of transmission is taking place. The principal distinction within mode is between those channels of communication that entail immediate contact and those that allow for deferred contact between participants. Immediate contact and deferred contact. Because of time constraints, you can still surf on the net and try to, find more explanations, justification, which is an easy task, of course, for, deferred context and immediate context, between the, participants. Last context that we will be considering, last type or class of context that we will be considering is, cultural context, So, cultural context refers to the culture, customs, and background of epoch and language communities in which the speakers participate. As we said, so discourse is basically language in use, in which case language is to be considered as a social phenomenon, and it is closely tied up with the social structure and value system of society. And you have to bear in mind that cultural context is a cover term that is used to refer to what is social, to what is economic, to what is religious, to what is artistic, to what is, economic, to what is sociocultural, to what is, political, and so on. Therefore, language cannot avoid being influenced by all these factors like social role, social status, sex, and age, etc. So social roles are culture-specific functions, institutionalized in a society and recognized by its members. It's true that social relations are not something that these are not fixed, but they are culture-specific functions. They are cultural-specific functions. They are institutionalized in a society and recognized by its members. By social status, we mean the relative social standing of the participants. Each participant in the language event must know or make assumptions about his or her status in relation to the other, and in many situations, status will also be an important factor in the determination of who should initiate the conversation. Sex and age are often determinants of or interact with social status. So the terms of address employed by a person of one sex speaking to another older one may differ from those which would be employed in otherwise similar situations by people of the same sex or of the same age. So these are the contexts that we are concerned with. Basically, linguistic context, situational context, and the cultural context. Then the last section, we are left with is that, specifying, and it's not, it's very easy to understand, because I made everything clearer for you. I have simplified and I have tried to make everything clear for you. And in this last section, we will be simply, learning about, the role that context plays in discourse analysis. And we have a number of roles. Number one is eliminating ambiguity. And it's like something that you are already familiar with in syntax. And has also a role in indicating reference. It also has a role in detecting conversational implicature, and it's easy to know about all these things. We have examples. So we should then conclude that the definition, classification, and the role of context in discourse analysis, we have tackled it from different angles. So we can even have more things to say, but briefly speaking, context plays a very important role in discourse analysis. A discourse without its context, it's not a discourse, because you will miss many important things if you do not take context into consideration. So I hope that you could follow with me, and you will be rereading the different lectures, trying to reflect more on them. And if you have any questions, you are welcome. We will be interacting on the platform. Is it clear, this, please?
Yes. Professor?
Yes, Sabah.
Professor, I have a question about the correction of the exercise of last session.
Yes, Sabah. Yes, Sabah. What are you saying?
The activity or the exercise of last session.
I told you before, Sabah, that you will be sending me everything via my email, and I'm going to share with you everything on the platform. Once you finish, you send me everything, and we will be discussing it together. Huh? Is it clear, Sabah?
Yes, Professor, it's clear.
Okay, same thing for phonology and phonetics, please. Same thing. So try to, do the practice, please. Try to do the practice. Try to do the practice, please. These practices are of paramount importance. And do not forget that I may be giving you questions in the exam from those practices. So you try to practice, please. Do invest efforts to practice everything. I'm ready to correct everything for you. Is it clear?
Yes, teacher.
Yes. Then we will bring this session to a closure, please. We will bring it to a closure, and I will be looking forward to hearing you, to listening to your complaints, comments, to listening to your reflections on different things that we discussed in the different sessions. So I have an emergency at home, please. I'm going to stop the virtual session, please. Is it clear? So let's call it a night. It's not a day. Okay, goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye, madam. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much for this session.